Quality proteins aren't just for special occasions. With Omaha Steaks, you get mouth-watering proteins delivered right to your door, individually packaged and portioned, so a great dinner is just minutes away. From Taco Tuesday to a weekend feast, taste the Omaha Steaks difference. Start getting flavorful proteins delivered today. Visit omahasteaks.com and get $35 off with promo code AUDIO at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, code AUDIO. Terms apply. See site for details.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my HVAC guy I found on Angie.com to change my grandpa's trachea tube? Because I was so amazed by how quickly he replaced our air ducts. I knew I could trust him to change Pop-Pop's tube while I was on vacation.
Make it quick, young man.
Aw, see? Pop-Pop trusts you.
I think we should call a doctor.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
How do you make chicken nuggets like 7,000% better? Short answer, you let Taco Bell make them. Long answer, start with all white meat chicken nuggets, bread them in crunchy tortilla chips, and serve them with Hidden Valley Diablo Ranch. Yep, that's Hidden Valley Ranch mixed with Taco Bell Diablo sauce. It's exactly what it sounds like, and somehow even better. Simple math, spicy results. Crispy chicken nuggets from Taco Bell. A brand new classic. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only, while supplies last.
Support for The Middle comes from the stations that air the show and from you. Thanks for making a donation at listentothemiddle.com.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Our DJ Tolliver is here as well. And Tolliver, I believe you are filling up your online shopping cart with solar panels before the tax credits expire?
If only I could drive to get them home, man. I got to figure that one out first. Need a solar vehicle.
You got to learn how to drive. I know. Tolliver doesn't drive, if for those of you who don't already know that. But that is what we're talking about this hour, going green, whether that means going solar at home, using an electric or hybrid car, getting a heat pump instead of heating your home with oil or gas, or even being conscious about your packaging or your recycling or other things like that. A lot of the government incentives to go green are going away because of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill that Republicans and the Trump administration passed in July. Tax credits for electric and hybrid vehicles went away a few months ago, and home energy incentives expire at the end of this month. The Trump administration says it's doing this because it wants taxpayers to stop subsidizing what it considers unreliable sources of energy like solar and wind. But this show is about you. We want to know whether going green matters to you, even if the government isn't going to help you do it. You can call in with your thoughts at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. And we'll get to those in a moment. But first, last week on the show, we asked about the state of your economy. So many calls. And here are some of the voicemails that came in.
Hello, this is Stratton Munson. I'm from Angleton, Texas. And I don't understand why people think that one president whether it's the Democrat or Republican, can control this and somehow bring prices down. It's just not going to happen.
Hi, my name is Caroline. I'm calling from Milwaukee. We hear about wage increases are going up. We're also hearing about grocery prices going up on average like 30%, they're saying year over year. Besides that, I don't know anyone I know who has gotten a 30% pay raise in the last, not year, not 5 years.
Hi, Jeremy. Linda Cooper from Wyoming. And your previous caller talking about prices, I would just want to say that shopping has become a religious experience for me. Every time I look at a price tag, I go, Jesus Christ.
Same girl, same.
Love her. Thanks to everyone who called in. As always, you can hear that whole show by subscribing to The Middle, wherever you get your podcast. So now to our topic this hour. Does going green matter to you? Tolliver, how can people reach us?
You can call us at 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can write to us at listentothemiddle.com or comment, anywhere we're on social media.
All right, joining us this hour, Robinson Meyer, founding executive editor of Heatmap News. Rob, great to have you on the show.
Be here. Thank you for having me.
And Joseph Romm is with us, senior research fellow at the University of Pennsylvania's Penn Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media. Joe, welcome to you as well.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let me start with you, Rob, because you've been covering every detail of what's been happening at the federal level. How has the landscape changed when it comes to green energy incentives since the big, beautiful bill, since the summer?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Trump administration and Congress, the current Congress, really significantly changed the landscape. I mean, they basically have removed every kind of incentive that existed in federal law to build or develop, renewable projects or have businesses or consumers, just regular people, buy electric cars. They've removed the tax credit. They're in the process of removing the tax credit for utility scale wind and solar developments that will go away next year. As you mentioned earlier, they have the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is removing tax credits for personal solar projects at the end of this year, and at the end of September, the tax credits to buy a new or used EV expired as well. So a lot of incentives that previously existed to help people switch to less polluting vehicles or forms of energy have gone away. I should say that there's one policy that remained, which is, and will remain in the future, which is that the original law that established these incentives was called the Inflation Reduction Act. It passed during the Biden administration, and that included a tax credit for developers to build batteries. That tax credit has stayed on the books, so people keep getting 30% off or a bonus to build batteries. It's building wind and solar projects to generate electrons for those batteries is no longer getting a tax credit, though.
Well, and as you said, buying electric cars or hybrids. And Joe, I saw there was a big spike in EV sales, electric vehicle sales, right before that tax credit ended, and then a big drop right after, which makes you think that these tax credits have been very important in getting people to go green, buy hybrid, buy electric.
Well, yeah, I mean, you should think of these tax credits as a way to make your energy more affordable, right? That's what it's about. The thing about electric vehicles is that the per mile cost of running an electric vehicle is like 4 or 5 times less than that of a gasoline car. And, for your solar at home, I mean, the good news is you should check, first of all, your state tax credits. Those are still in effect, and it may be cost effective in certain areas. And also, based on what I was checking, there is also the possibility of doing solar leases because the tax credit for leasing is in effect for another year or so. But look, the purpose of these tax credits was to help people manage higher electricity prices, right? That was the purpose of it. That's why it was called the Inflation Reduction Act. Maybe it wasn't, as well named or well explained as it should have been. But people's electricity bills have been going up, right? I think, if you have an electric, if you keep track of your electric bills, they've been going up. The other thing you may have noticed going up in the last few months is natural gas prices. And,
So if you had solar on your home, you wouldn't be dealing with those increases that you would be seeing from your home heating oil or natural gas.
Right. I mean, the solar, and in D.C., my house has some solar panels on it, and it definitely moderates the prices, particularly in the summertime. Right. That's when the price spikes the most. So this is all about affordability, and it's a great tragedy that these have been yanked away.
Well, and what is it about, Rob, for the Trump administration? What are they saying? I mean, there are a lot of things that we cover all the time that they're undoing things that Biden did because they don't like President Biden and they don't think that he made the right decisions, and they're undoing things. But in this case, it's about more than that. What is the rationale for taking away all of these credits and moving the country back towards oil and gas and coal? Even?
Well, well, I would start by saying I wouldn't underestimate the importance of kind of simple anti-Biden sentiment in driving the policies here. I think a number of the policies that were taken away and or struck from the books in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act had been policies that predated the Inflation Reduction Act in some way. I'd call out the wind tax credit, for instance. That policy has been largely bipartisan. It goes back in some form to the 1990s. It's been supported by members of both parties, but because it was changed in certain ways or got more attention in the Inflation Reduction Act under Biden, there does seem like there was particular energy from the Trump administration to get it off the books. And I do think that's, frankly, as tied to the fact that Donald Trump personally wanted that tax credit to go away as anything else. And I think actually a number of policies that were removed in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act probably would have stayed under a different president with different goals. It's just that Trump really was focused on these climate policies. I will say broadly, look, the Trump administration there's two things you hear from them. The first is that they say wind and solar are, infrequent. They only generate electricity during some times of the day, and so therefore they don't want to subsidize those. I would be remiss not to mention at the same time that, it's been reported that Donald Trump did meet with oil executives before he won, before his campaign begun, and said, if you make a big donation to my campaign, I'm going to help out your industry. And we've seen, and they did make a big donation to his campaign, and now he's helping them out. And so I think that there's a number of different potential reasons here that the Trump administration and congressional Republicans made these decisions. But I actually would not rule out vindictiveness.
Joe, I want to get to one other thing before we start going to callers, just to bring this up as part of this discussion, which is things that don't require tax credits that people do to go green. And that would be, reducing food waste or packaging waste or recycling. How important are those things? And are people in the United States doing them more or less than they used to?
Well, the United States is, compared to a number of countries, not the best at recycling, and we're particularly bad at recycling plastic. And I think a lot of that is simply the oil industry. The oil industry has seen the growing concern about climate change and the fact that there were policies being adopted to make cars more fuel efficient and the like. And so one of the product lines that they have wanted to increase is plastics, right? Petrochemical plastics. And we don't do a good job of recycling. I don't think it would be hard for us to match some of the better countries in the world, but it is something that unfortunately has been, I would just say, undermined by the major oil companies who don't want to make it easy to return bottles. It used to be, you may remember. You're close to my age, I think, and you remember when that you could get your bottles. A nickel back, right, for the bottles.
Do they even make nickels anymore? I know they stopped making pennies, but yes, yeah. I do remember that. I will say, by the way, as we prepare to go to calls, our number is 844-4-MIDDLE, 844-464-3353, and we do want to hear from you, even if it doesn't matter to you to go green. But if it does matter to you, we want to hear from you as well. Give us a call, 844-4-MIDDLE. Tolliver, one of the arguments against spending money on renewable energy is that other countries may not be doing it.
Yeah, President Trump has pointed to coal plants being opened in China. Here he is speaking back in April.
China's opening 2 plants every week. Germany went green very green. They went so green they almost went out of business. Germany was finished. They went to wind. The wind wasn't blowing too much. And they went to all sorts of other things. You know, the Green New Scam hit Germany too. And guess what? Now they're back to coal. They're opening up coal plants all over Germany. We're the ones that aren't doing it.
Important to note that Germany did restart some coal plants to deal with an energy crisis when the Ukraine war started, but has since shut them back down and remains committed to phasing out coal by the year 2030. We've got your calls coming up on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're asking if going green matters to you. Tolliver, the number again, please.
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com or on all social media.
I'm joined by Heatmap News Executive Editor Robinson Meyer and Joseph Romm, a climate expert at the University of Pennsylvania. And Rob, we just heard President Trump there talking about China. How do Americans compare to, say, China and India when it comes to green energy?
So I would say there's two totally different stories. China, what's happening with electricity in China is actually, I think, one of the most important and interesting energy stories that's happened this century. And it is extremely relevant in the age of artificial intelligence. And that's because China seemingly has the ability to add enormous amounts of energy and electricity generation to its power grid, and has built an extremely capable and extremely large power grid. So the president mentioned in that clip that China is building coal plants. It is building coal plants. Last year, actually, it started to build 100 gigawatts of coal, which is a lot of electricity. And at the same time, it added more than 300 gigawatts of renewable electricity, and especially solar. And so what's taking shape in China is, I think, a fairly unintuitive to American ears combination of like a hydro, solar, and coal-powered grid. And so China is simultaneously in the position of building more coal plants than the rest of the world combined, and also building more solar than the rest of the world combined. I think it's driven by both competition within the provinces, and also this kind of embrace from China's central government of building as much energy as possible. You could add that some of this is a lot of anxiety in China about being dependent on oil. The country doesn't have very large oil reserves in the same way, say, the U.S. or the Middle East does, and so there's been a move to any other kind of secure energy source. India, different story, very coal dependent, and kind of much more of a traditional, heavy pollution, developing country story. Although they are building a fair amount of solar as well.
Well, and on the individual level that we're talking about this hour, Joe, what do you say to people who say, I'm not going to make a decision based on the environment because other people are not doing it?
Well, I think the important thing to remember, and maybe we don't say this enough, is that the price of solar power has come down by a factor of 10 in the past decade, and in the past 3 decades it's come down a factor of 100. Right? Solar is in fact the cheapest form of electric power,
and not just because of government subsidies.
No, not because so many, because it's. It's been technology advances, the way batteries have come down in price, right? Certain technologies, because they're small and modular, can come down a learning curve. Not every technology can do this, but the important point is that solar, wind, and batteries this year in the United States will be 93% of all new electric generating capacity. And it's strictly as a matter of cost. Now, the purpose of the tax credits is that solar has a high upfront cost, right? It doesn't have any fuel cost, right? Like natural gas boiler, you have to keep buying natural gas, right? The sun just keeps shining. So it's one upfront cost. So it made sense, I think, and I worked at the Department of Energy for 5 years, and I helped run the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. The idea was help people pay for the first costs, and then they would be free from these price fluctuations. You may remember the price of natural gas over the last 25 years has skyrocketed and dropped down, and it makes it very hard for anyone to do planning. And now, of course, we're exporting a lot of our cheap natural gas. That's what liquefied natural gas, those LNG terminals, are about. So if you export our cheap gas, which the president wants to do, you're obviously going to make domestic gas prices higher. And that's exactly what's happening.
Let's get to the phones. Liz is calling in from Minneapolis. Liz, are you going green? Does it matter to you?
Hi. It matters a great deal to me. I'm actually an environmental science high school teacher. And I really think that everybody cares about having a clean and healthy and green environment. I can't imagine there's very many people that don't care about it, but it's with the removal of incentives like this, it makes it a rich person's game to be an environmentalist, and something that if you're struggling in other ways, it becomes really difficult to prioritize something that seems abstract and in the far future. So I think I'm so upset about the removal of these incentives. I think it makes it really difficult for ordinary folks to prioritize those long-term things for themselves and their families and their neighbors. And I'm curious also. I don't know. There was a court case in Montana a couple of years ago, Held versus the state of Montana, where young people sued the state and said that by giving incentives and not considering climate change, giving incentives more to fossil fuel companies, they were endangering their future, which was against the state constitution. And I'm curious if your experts have any ideas on any implications of that ruling from a couple years ago.
Thank you, Liz, for that. I'll first of all ask if either of you know about that ruling and its effects.
I can talk about it a little. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm going to not be able to go much farther than the caller.
Let me ask you this then.
Yeah.
She brought up this point that it's a rich person's game, and I just wonder, as we're seeing prices rise on so many other things right now, people are having a difficult time affording the food that they're buying at the supermarket. Does that make it less likely that people are going to want to do things that would be good for the environment, or even, as we've heard from Joe, good for the long term of their financial health, because they may be paying a lot less for energy? Rob?
Well, I think absolutely, and I think we saw that in the sales data earlier this year for EVs, which is as soon as those tax credits went away for EVs, there was a surge in EV purchasing in September as people rushed to get in before the deadline, and then in October, I think EV sales fell 30 to 50%, depending on the brand, which is in line with what we've seen around the world when you pull out EV tax credits like this, or incentives or subsidies in some ways. You do see sales fall, and I think that's exactly the situation we're talking about, right? That as soon as people have to make a trade-off between, it's EVs are at the point. Joe was talking about how many might be cheaper on a per mile basis. I could say I think that does depend on whether you can charge at home. I live in an apartment in the city. I can't charge at home, and I would rely on chargers. But I think EVs depend. They're still often expensive upfront on an upfront basis, even if they're then cheap to charge. And in order to make that large upfront purchase, you do need help.
Yeah.
And that was part of the rationale for the tax credits.
Yeah, I saw somebody at the Whole Foods near me has a free electric vehicle charger right in the front, and there was a guy in his Tesla sleeping. I don't think he was a customer. I think he just came there to charge for free the other day. It tells you about the need for that. Susan is calling in from Canyon County, Idaho. Susan, go ahead. Are you going green? Does it matter to you?
Absolutely. I'm a retired grandma, so my dollars are not that many and they matter, but I've been able to go green for years. At the end of the first Trump administration, I was able to acquire a gently used second generation EV without the credit, but the savings from the depreciation from the dealer got me a brand new car with only 1,000 miles on it. And it's been a jewel. And I've been working on the idea of rooftop, but I've always been ineligible due to my home being manufactured. Never has been eligible for these credits. But I've been watching the plug-in solar phenomenon, the balcony plug-in solar panels that are so popular in Europe. And apparently we have a couple companies here that have been selling them for a few years. But this year, my neighboring state of Utah passed a law to make them absolutely legal and to compel the utilities to allow these devices that do not even have to cycle the power back into the grid. They can turn themselves off when they reach an excess situation. So now I'm reading, since then, that law was passed in March or so, that China is now interested in entering our market, which I think a little competition will make our domestic manufacturers want to bear the cost.
Yeah, interesting point. Yeah, Susan, thank you very much for that. Joe, it brings up the question of whether the private sector, without these credits, is going to still keep moving in the direction it had been. And that could be solar companies or electric companies or car companies that had already been kind of becoming more green.
Well, I think, look, the good news is that and I think it's important for all your listeners to understand, electric vehicles have become the winner in essentially every major country in the world. And it's slower here for a couple reasons. One, we have policies like, that are opposing or slowing their use. And second, people drive like twice as far here as they do in other countries. But in much of Europe and China, these are not only the fastest growing, but they're coming down in price. And I think most Americans will see, within a few years that these cars are actually either the same price or cheaper. but they're much easier to maintain. They have far fewer moving parts, right? So the repair bills are considerably lower. Again, the per mile cost is considerably lower, and the performance is just, this is a car that can accelerate 0 to 60 in a couple of seconds. And as we move towards making our cars much more electronic platforms, it just makes sense to have large electric batteries on board the car. Otherwise, you have to run it off the gasoline engine, which is incredibly inefficient. So the future is electric cars, and that's sort of one of the tragedies of eliminating the tax credits. The tax credits were as much to help the auto industry make the transition to these cars that are going to dominate the marketplace in the 2030s, right? They're just going to take over.
Even still, you think they still will?
Toyota is about to, within 2 or 3 years, Toyota has introduced a $15,000 electric vehicle in China, right? And I think you're going to see Toyota introduce like 20 different models all by itself in the next 2 or 3 years. And I think you're going to see the affordability of these vehicles. And again, we continue the build out of electric chargers, right? And so that other issue of, am I going to be able to get a charger and all of that is being addressed. And like I said, I think that there's no real stopping, electric vehicles.
I saw a friend just posted a cross-country road trip in an electric vehicle with the stops all the way from Montana to Florida, and was able to make it all the way across with the charging stations necessary. Tolliver, what is coming in at listentothemiddle.com?
Yeah, we got a bunch of folks asking about the role of AI in this discussion, especially me. And then also Lori in Minnesota has posed a really interesting question. She says, please ask your guests about the costs in public health associated with fossil fuel energy, such as asthma, respiratory illness, and cancer. So I posit that to you guys.
Interesting question, Rob. That is another cost that is important to think about. It's not just, these things don't happen in a vacuum.
It's true. I mean, I think when you look worldwide, fossil fuels or combustion from fossil fuels is responsible for like 1 in 5 deaths worldwide because, soot, particularly this like very microscopic particulate matter that can pass the blood-brain barrier and get stuck in your veins, is responsible for some huge share of heart attacks. In the U.S., I will say we have the Clean Air Act. We have catalytic converters in our cars. It doesn't have the same mortality impact here necessarily, but in some neighborhoods it does. Either those neighborhoods near power plants or neighborhoods where a highway goes through. I think there was also an AI question, but I don't want to leap ahead.
Well, and we're gonna get to AI. Don't you worry.
Yeah,
we will get to AI. Let's go to Scott, who's in Charleston, South Carolina. Hi, Scott. Go ahead with your question or your thoughts about this.
Well, good evening. You were asking if I believe in going green, as you say. Absolutely. I cannot think of one factor that is not beneficial regarding solar power in particular. And I think AI and what we're seeing and reading in the news regarding the consumption of electricity as AI comes along is just massive. The electric rates are already continually rising through the utility companies. Solar power is a saving grace, and it's.
Do you think it'll be enough, though, Scott, to power the future if there's going to be all these data centers for artificial intelligence?
The question isn't whether it's enough, because the utilities aren't going anywhere. Generation of power is not an issue as to only coal or only solar or only wind. It's a confluence of all the above, and it's ignorant to cut out. In my opinion, it's just silly to cut out solar power when the pros outweigh the cons to such an incredible degree.
Yeah.
The consumption of energy and electricity is not diminishing. and prices are not coming down, regardless of what anybody says and thinks. Prices never come down.
Right. When we talked about that all last week on the show, actually, Scott. But thank you for that call, Joe. Your thoughts about that? That we'll need solar, but we'll also need other sources of energy to power the AI future.
Well, this is something I've studied a great deal. I wrote a report earlier for the University of Pennsylvania, the Center for Science, Sustainability, and Media. I just was on a webinar panel for the National Academy of Sciences on this subject. Here's the thing to realize. The data is now very good that the closer you are to a data center, the more likely it is that the wholesale prices of electricity around you, and therefore the retail prices, are going to go up, right? The data is now very good at that. We're in this very bizarre world where 6 or 7 of the most successful companies in the United States are all trying to do exactly the same thing. And so we're getting this staggering duplication of people trying to get data centers built. And every single one of the grid operators has this huge list of companies that says we want to build a data center. Mm-hmm. And so they're making these projections. We have to build all of these power plants, and that is simply going to drive up everyone's utility rates. And I urge people to be very skeptical.
Yeah. Well, Tolliver, electric vehicles, as we've heard, are a big part of this conversation. And for our Gen Z listeners, Tesla was not the beginning of that.
Yeah, first we had hybrid cars, especially the Toyota Prius, which came to the U.S. in the early 2000s, along with this commercial in which you can hear oil derricks sprouting legs and walking away.
There's a change happening. It begins with Prius, Toyota's revolutionary hybrid vehicle, and continues with more vehicles rated most fuel efficient in their class than any other brand. Transportation is finally evolving.
Okay, Tolliver, did you hear how he said is finally evolving? That was Jeff Goldblum who was in that commercial, and he stressed that word evolving because back then he was famous for knowing a lot about evolution in the original Jurassic Park movie. Remember him? He's like, you spent so much time thinking about whether you should, you didn't think about whether you could, you didn't think about whether you should.
Should, yep.
I got to get my Jurassic Park lines down. We'll be right back with more of your calls coming up on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have we asked our contractor we found on Angie.com to be our kids' legal guardian? Because he took such good care when redoing our basement that we knew we could trust him to care for our kids, all 8 of them, should something happen to us.
Are you my dad now?
No, sorry, I do basements.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured 2 prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
to be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. This hour, we're asking if going green matters to you. I'm joined by Joseph Romm, Senior Research Fellow at the University of Pennsylvania's Penn Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media, and Heatmap News Executive Editor Robinson Meyer. Our number is 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. And again, if you aren't interested in going green, I do want to hear from you. It doesn't just have to be people who are interested in going green. Rob, I want to get to one thing that's been in the news that does connect to this conversation, which is Bill Gates made headlines in October when he kind of backed off the doomsday view of climate change and talked about climate exaggeration. What is the significance in your mind of that? Are people just burnt out from hearing that if they don't do X, Y, or Z, the planet's going to die?
I think that so Bill Gates put out a memo in October, as you were saying, that he said it was called 3 Tough Truths on Climate or something. And I it was a number of journalists who kind of heard him speak about the memo. I would say that my takeaway from the memo was less that he thinks there's been exaggeration of kind of what climate might do in the near term or in the long term, and more that what he's observed in the Trump administration, but frankly also from Western European governments, is that there has been a defunding of kind of traditional public health and development programs across the planet. I think the most significant would be USAID and its defunding of PEPFAR, the giant HIV prevention program in Africa. And I think for Gates, whose money has gone, to kind of splits his philanthropy between public health and climate, the memo was almost a signal to climate groups that, like, look, as long as there is this total destruction of public health money, I'm going to fund public health first because that's what I think is most important in the near term.
Imagine having those choices. What can I do with my billions? Sidarius is calling in from Nashville, Tennessee. Does growing green matter to you, Sidarius?
Going green actually matters to me because we can't extract resources from our planet forever without consequences. And I feel like America would be so much farther in the EV revolution if we didn't have certain industries and certain companies that depended on their profits so wholeheartedly that any new technology is seen as an existential threat. I'm talking, of course, about the oil companies.
And what about from your perspective? I mean, have you yourself decided to go solar, get an EV or anything like that?
Well, I definitely haven't gone solar or haven't gone EV, but I have heard a very interesting article from NPR about how eating fish eating chicken more as opposed to eating fish or beef can actually reduce my carbon footprint. So I have been taking that into account as opposed to, I just like eating more foods that is more sustainably grown and locally grown. In that case, like, it's not all has to be technology driven, so to speak, that there are small habits that everyday people can do, like changing your diet or taking a walk or even going back to carpooling.
Yeah, great points, Sidarius. Thank you very much, Joe. What do you think about that? And what would you say to our listeners who say, I can't afford right now to, do these big technological advancements in my car or my home, but I can do these other things. Don't they matter?
Yeah, well, look, I certainly would urge everyone who is concerned about, let's say, their electricity rates. Most local utilities have programs to help you save energy. I don't know the utilities. Many utilities aren't so good at advertising. Others are, but generally, they have rebates, and they have people sometimes who will even, do an energy audit of your home, look for where the heat is leaking out. So yeah, I think the easiest way to lower your energy bill is energy efficiency, right? LED lighting, more insulation, more efficient equipment of that sort. So I think people always have options to address the situation. But, like I said, if the government has flawed policies, that's just going to be like an albatross, or a lead weight around everybody's neck. And unfortunately, that's the situation, we're in for the next few years.
Gary is calling in from Philadelphia. Gary, go ahead with your thoughts about going green.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to the epidemic of doomism of majority of our high school age kids feeling we're screwed. It's too late. And why bother? And just want to give one important fact that I hope parents will convey to these cynical, pessimistic kids that they have, and the teachers will convey. And here's the fact, that every 1/10 of a degree we can prevent from happening by accelerating getting rid of fossil fuel emissions, and it also includes eating beef, because cattle raising produces as much global warming gases via methane as does driving cars. Every 1/10 of a degree we can prevent from happening will save the lives of 200 million people. It's more than half the size of this country every year, dying from floods, from droughts, from disease, and from migration.
So every little bit counts. Gary, thank you for that. And actually, since you bring up the young people, just so we don't tarnish everybody with being a pessimist, because a lot of young people that we hear from on this show are quite optimistic about the future. We've got a 31-year-old, I'm going to count that as young, Cody in Kansas City is calling in. Don't you think, Tolliver, that's young? Okay, Cody, go ahead. What do you think? What do you think about what you just heard there?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you think I'm young, Jeremy. That's really great to hear. Well, to get to the original question, I think it's not just important to me; it's essential to me and my friends my age who are just now having kids, to ensure that we all have a livable future. What we know about the climate crisis as it stands, and the feedback loops that are soon to be triggered if we continue along this path of global warming, will really create a planet that's not livable in my lifetime. So while I do think it's important to go green in any capacity you can as an individual, I think the best thing, and I would encourage your listeners to do, is to talk to your neighbors and organize and mobilize against specifically data centers as they pop up around the country. Several in Kansas City are promising to use more energy than the entire city produces. And the local utilities will be opening new gas firing plants to accommodate for these things. And this is happening all over the country. These tech barons are trying to make hay while the sun is shining, aka while Trump is in office, and they're in the Oval Office with them. So talk to your neighbors, show up to your city council meetings where these zoning conversations are happening, where discussions about what incentives to give the richest companies on the planet like Meta and Google to build these data centers and rob you of your water and your energy are happening, and you can do something about it. Talk to your community, plug in, and do something.
Yeah, thank you, Cody, for that. Joe, you were nodding along as he was talking about data centers and organizing against them.
Absolutely. Look, like I said, we're on path to overbuild the data centers. There's no question. Look, AI is a very useful tool, but do we need an AI from, Meta and from Google and from OpenAI and from, several other countries, companies. I appreciate that everybody, doesn't want to be left behind, but I think what we're going to do is be left with a huge overbuild. And what happens is if you build these plants and then it turns out you don't need to use all of them, you are stuck with this asset that the utility gets to charge you for. Right. The utility wants to build more power plants because that's how it is able to raise your rates. Right. That's the way most utility regulations are done in this country. So, I think that, yes, I urge people, and a lot of people around the country are organizing locally to stop these data centers because, yes, as this caller said, they also soak up a lot of water besides electricity. So, you don't want to be left in a situation, and they don't generate a lot of jobs. Yes, you have to construct them, right? But once you run them, once you have them running, right, they're just a server farm, right?
And if they're empty, I mean, how many Spirit of Halloweens can you have in this country? There's just not enough. Not enough people, not enough costumes needed. Danny is in Las Vegas. Danny, what about you? Does going green matter to you?
Hi. Yes, I'm Danny. It definitely matters to me. I'm 25. I'm a doctoral candidate in electrical engineering. I wanted to make a quick comment about electrical vehicles, and we absolutely need to move away from fossil fuel sources, but there's a new foresight that needs to be put into our solutions going forward that hasn't been in the past. In particular, mining for lithium and nickel is very destructive, and in Nevada particularly will cause destruction of quite a few unique wildlife refuges and water sources. So there are better solutions that we might possibly need to consider more, like hydrogen fuel cell cars, which use smaller batteries overall, in solutions for our transportation. And just this kind of forethought that we didn't have before I know we need to move quickly, but we have to think really long term, because if we do this wrong again and we allow private interests to force feed us electrical vehicles and things that aren't good, it will be really damaging to our children, to our lives, to our planet. So,
Danny, very interesting points. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Rob, because just because something is environmentally friendly compared to the alternative doesn't mean it's environmentally perfect. And actually, President Trump people laugh when he says this, but he's talked about, wind farms killing birds. I know that there's been, a lot of talk about wind farms in the water, in the ocean, being harmful because of how does it affect whales and things like that. What about some of the downsides environmentally of EVs, for example?
Yeah, I have a colleague who says we shouldn't call, this will be a controversial statement, that we shouldn't call solar and wind clean energy because they are zero carbon energy. They're very important forms of energy, but we should just describe what they are, because people are going to say, oh, I don't like this. I've heard that this mineral is in them and I don't like that aspect of it. And I think to the extraction question, it's a tough one. And what I'd say is that when you think about kind of what energy sources require what level of extraction, the most extraction that's required of any kind of form is actually for gasoline, right? So gasoline and oil require taking resources out of the ground continually in order to keep just filling up your tank. In the middle, I would say, is EVs and whether it's lithium. I would say that there's been progress recently in moving from EV batteries that require cobalt and other particularly hard minerals to get to what are called LFP batteries, which require iron, maybe more common minerals. The energy source that actually requires the least amount of extraction is going to sound funny to maybe the old school environmentalists in the group, which is nuclear. Although uranium mining can be quite locally destructive, it actually requires the least amount of extraction per unit of energy created. I think the challenge here is that any kind of industrial development is going to require some form of extraction, some form of mining, and there we can have arguments and there's discussions and there are political battles as the caller was referencing to whether it will happen in the U.S. I will say the U.S. is not the only entity that gets to cast a vote, and Americans are not the only entity that gets to cast a vote kind of about where minerals are extracted. And China has been very successful, for instance, in operating mines, extracting these minerals across the world. And I think that if they're, without weighing in on any one project, the track record for mines that are domestically in the U.S. Has been better than those operated abroad.
Tolliver, let's get another comment from listentothemiddle.com.
Sure. Lubo says, I will add one more alternative. Fix the leaks in your house. There's a German idea for passive houses that lets you live comfortably with little electricity, and we continue to push energy through the cracks. And I'm going to sneak this last one in. Paul says, gentlemen, how is the development of hydrogen engines for cars progressing? Will we see hydrogen-powered cars in the near future?
I'm going to hold that for another show because I feel like that's like I'm going to get one more caller in here. Ilana.
Well, I should say, I
ahead,
did write a book called
about
hydrogen.
Okay, fine. I take that back. Go ahead.
And I did run the hydrogen program. Yeah, I don't think hydrogen is really the future. I don't want to. You should do a whole show on some of these other technologies. But yeah, I think electricity is the winner because in order to have a green hydrogen car, you have to make the hydrogen from renewable electricity anyway, and it's a very inefficient process. So I think the future is electric vehicles. I don't think that there's many experts who would tell you different.
All right, let's sneak in one more. Wayne in Proctor, Minnesota. Wayne, does going green matter to you?
Oh, hi. Yes. 2 years ago, I bought an electric vehicle because of the Canadian fires. I live up by Duluth, and I just got tired of that. I also have a hybrid water heater, which has a heat exchanger on top that's much more efficient and heating up my hot water. And other things I can do to go more green, I will.
And does it save you money?
Oh, yes. Also, I can power my house off of my electric vehicle. It has an adapter, so I can actually plug it into my house.
Wow. And just
so
explain
when power
to me,
goes out, I got backup.
You said that you did this because of the Canadian fires, just because of the environmental things that you believe were leading to those fires happening, or what?
Yeah, yes, and just the smoke that we got. We're a lot closer to Canada than a lot of other cities. And just all the smoke we're getting, I got tired of it. And I thought, well, I'm going to get an electric vehicle. At least going to drive around and not make it worse. But also, overall, it'll help the environment. I'm using less energy, less fossil fuels.
Yeah. Wayne, thank you very much for that call. Joe, it's interesting. We've heard from so many people, whether they are actually buying an electric vehicle or going solar or not, they care and they're doing what they can.
Absolutely. I think people often get this view that this isn't popular because some of the people who oppose it, it's a small group, but they're very noisy, and they get repeated a lot on social media. But yes, the overwhelming majority of Americans support strong, all of those tax credits that got canceled, those have like 70, 80% public support. So I think it's important to understand, as you heard on this show, yes, people are doing this, and you really do have opportunities to lower the cost of your energy bills. Sometimes with technology, sometimes, check for, yes, you can get an energy audited house, which will have an infrared detector that'll look where the heat is escaping or the cold air is going in, and you can fix those, and that will make a very big difference at a low cost.
And Rob, just a last word to you briefly. Do you think that in the next 10 years, depending on what happens in our politics, that these kinds of tax credits will ever come back?
I do think they'll come back. I think they're very likely to come back. And I actually think that it's as much to do with America needing to maintain competitiveness as anything else. This year in China, 51% of new vehicle sales were electric. China is able to make electric cars for less than $30,000 that have hundreds of miles of range. And the rest of the world is very tired of importing oil. Here in the U.S., we're blessed with big oil reserves, and we have relatively cheap gasoline. The rest of the world is very tired of importing oil, and they're very eager to import those vehicles. I think in order to stay competitive, we're going to need an EV strategy here in the United States.
That is Robinson Meyer, the executive editor of Heatmap News. We've also been speaking with Joseph Romm, senior research fellow at the University of Pennsylvania's Penn Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media. Thanks to both of you so much for joining us.
Thanks you.
Thanks for having us.
And next week, Tolliver, we will be joined by two longtime caregiving experts. We're going to be asking if you're ready to care for a loved one when that time comes. Apparently, 1 in 4 adults in the United States is doing that right now.
Wow. You can reach us at 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can go to listentothemiddle.com to subscribe to our free weekly newsletter, which is now on Substack.
The Middle is brought to you by Long Neck Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Sam Burmastaz, John Barth, Annika Dessler, and Brandon Kondritz. Our technical director is Steve Mork. Thanks to our satellite radio listeners, our podcast audience, and the hundreds of public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. I will talk to you next week.
Owning a home is full of surprises. Some wonderful, some not so much. And when something breaks, it can feel like the whole day unravels. That's why HomeServe exists. For as little as $4.99 a month, you'll always have someone to call. A trusted professional ready to help, bringing peace of mind to 4.5 million homeowners nationwide. For plans starting at just $4.99 a month, go to homeserve.com. That's homeserve.com. Not available everywhere. Most plans range between $4.99 to $11.99 a month your first year. Terms apply on covered repairs.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.